It's a blessed evening and welcome to our program, The Conversation. And I just want to take this time and I welcome you all, our friends and our viewers and our listeners on Bold Moves Radio and on Bold Moves Radio YouTube, Bold Moves Radio Facebook page. Thank you so very much. Just want to welcome you tonight. It's a wonderful evening. It's a Thursday evening. Today is the 9th of June, 2022. And I have tonight with my guest and my brother and my friend, and that is none other but a man who is multi-talented and multi-gifted, multi-skilled, because Dr. Mabila Mathebula, he serves as, or he holds a PhD in construction management from Nelson Mandela University, and he sampled the following professions in his diverse career life. He was an accounting teacher at Pace Community College in Soweto and news producer at the South African Broadcasting Corporation, the SABC, internal communications manager and operational safety manager at Transnet Freight Rail. And in 2002, he went to portfolio as, or he had a portfolio. He headed a portfolio as a safety. I think I'm missing something here. Health and environmental consultant, exchanging security for freedom. Mabila has been instrumental toward the establishment of railway safety regulator, which is RSR in South Africa. He rejoined the corporate world in 2011 and was employed by RSR as a senior researcher at the RSR. He now occupies the status of manager education and awareness right at RSR. Mabila has spoken at numerous international railway safety conferences and as well as construction management conferences on 4 continents. You know, this is the doctor that I'm talking about, and I feel it's important for me to so we are going to hear more about him before we even dive on the conversation tonight, because he also comes with a very interesting topic, and the topic is through the straight gate, you know, and I just want to hear from him what all this is all about. But before we do that, I would love to take this time and say, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, welcome, my dear brother. Welcome, my colleague. Welcome, my friend. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Pastor Strike, and thank you for the invitation.
You know, Doc, hosting you is such an honor and a privilege because you are an all-rounded man. You have a lot of things. You're a pastor. You're a doctor in construction. You are you're a safety man. You are a broadcaster. In fact, I remember my days with the SABC. You were my, let me say, my content producer, in the sense that when it comes to research, I knew that I have a reservoir when it comes to research, because that is your strength. But I remember how we met. It was not nice because I did not know you, neither did you know me, but you knew me just on air. And I remember I was interviewing somebody who had traveled abroad, and they were comparing, or they were looking at public transportation and comparing the transportation of that particular place they visited with our public transportation in South Africa. And they said something, I'm telling you, they triggered something in Dr. Mabila, and he jumped on me. He literally jumped. He didn't care who I am. He said, please, if your guest knows nothing about public transportation, they better keep quiet. And, you know, it's easy to also give it back to him. I don't even know you. Who do you think you are? But I thought, this man, the way he's so angry and furious, he's got something good. I said, yes, sir. Oh, sorry, sir. No, I hear, sir. And then from that moment, he said, look, if people wants to talk, or if you want to talk about something, please, I'm here. I'm a researcher. I avail myself to help in researching. And Doc, you remember that introduction?
Yeah, well, I remember, and I'm actually appreciative of all the accolades. But I think if I could actually sum up my role in life, I think I am a servant.
Yes.
What I'm doing is I serve, and I not only serve South Africa, but I also serve the world. You remember that I'm also an international advisor to a university, to a railway university in New Delhi, in India. And I was also part of the Transport Research Board in Washington, D.C. And then I've always seen myself as an international servant. I'm there to serve, and where there is service, I'll always jump.
Yeah, your passion cannot, there's nothing that can hold back your passion. But before we look at entering through the straight gate, or through the straight gate, which I think that's your life, let's talk about your journey a little bit. Who is Dr. Mabila Mathebula? You know, with all these accolades and with the service that you have rendered within our country in different sectors, you talk of the SABC, you talk of this South African Railways, you talk of academia, you talk of all this. You are there, but exactly who is Dr. Mabila Mathebula?
I'd like to say that I was born in a village called Mukwaneng, you know, a village with no mention on the map in Limpopo, and then I came to Joburg, where I grew up in Soweto, and my career life, and then from there I went to Lemana, and then in terms of career, I started off as a teacher. And then I was an accounting teacher by then, and I worked at Pace Community College. And by then, Pace Community College was the only private school in Soweto, where English was taught as a first language. And then it was a highly prestigious college. And then from there, I realized that I was helping young minds to grow, whereas my mind was not growing. That's where I decided to join the SABC, and I joined the SABC when it was very excited, because the year I joined the SABC, we're busy with being trained as to conduct elections in South Africa.
Oh yes,
I was part and parcel of the first elections. I was trained by the Canadians and the Americans in terms of broadcasting. And I also interviewed a lot of people. I interviewed the president, Cyril Ramaphosa. I interviewed the president de Klerk, and so many people. And then from there, that's where I was actually recruited by Sportnet by then. And I was given an opportunity as an internal communications manager, because they knew that I was good at communications. But I actually realized when I was there that the railways was not about communications, it was about operations. That's why you actually find that when you go to the corporate world, there are two streams. You have got racialized labor and mainstream. Racialized labor, is something that communications, human resources, things that Black people are often given those opportunities. But the mainstream is about the real operation. That's why I decided to go into safety management. Safety management, I was not in the mainstream because it was part of operations. Safety management is something that took me to different countries, where I started presenting papers in different organizations until we went overseas. We benchmarked, the railway safety in South Africa. Then I was part and parcel of it, and then I worked for the railway safety, but I now decided to go portfolio, because I actually realized that, at times being in a corporate world and you have got a mind to create employment, Why am I depriving people of employment by staying in the corporate world, where at times you're not even recognized, or even maybe you have to be recognized? People decide, to ignore you. And I often, see something like this. It's like I often give the analogy of the ocean and the drop. Being in a corporate world, to some of the people, it's like a drop. A drop does not recognize you, but the ocean recognizes you. And I realized that every Sunday, I talk to people on radio. I write for the Sunday Times. I write for the Star and and I realized, but why should I actually focus on the drop, where else there's the world out there awaiting for me? That's why I decided to go portfolio. That's where I am.
Wow. Thanks so very much, Doc. And thanks to our viewers. Thank you very much. You're welcome. And apologies, we started a little bit, I think 6 minutes later. The Wi-Fi just acted up when we're about to take off, but thank you so very much because we are now connected. We really appreciate you. We will welcome your comments, your questions, whatever you would love us to dive on. Tonight, Doc, we're talking through the straight gate. What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought it up. I've actually realized that, more often than not, we say to people must think outside the box. But I've got a different view. I think that COVID has actually taught us something, COVID-19, that the box is no longer there. And now, you can't actually think outside the box because the box is no longer there. It means that you have to be very creative in order for you to survive. In order for you to survive, you need to learn new skills and unlearn old skills. For example, when you look at most of us, when we went to university, we went to university with a view to being employed. I wanted to go to university with a view to being employed. One went to university with a view of putting on an academic gown. Like even parents would actually be very excited. But now my challenge, my challenge is how appear. What is it that you are doing with your degree to help your country? What is it that you are doing with that degree to help the world? Because if I've got a PhD and I sit behind a desk and then I report to a person with a junior degree or with no degree, what is it that I'm doing? Because the PhD must actually create more employment. Because if, for example, I go into the corporate environment where I'll be, oppressed by people who are unqualified, people who are, uncreative, people who can't think, people who haven't done anything in any way, like some people, even when you go to Google, the person is your boss, but you go to Google, this person is not there. Why is he there? Like as you said, I've presented papers in a number of conferences, Canada, the United States, I've been part of so many things. When you look at the boss, the person that you are reporting to, he has not even written one paper. This person is not even a public speaker. This person cannot even write a paragraph. And every week you are writing a paragraph that is actually read by the world. Why are you still there? And I realized that, being here, it's something purgatorial. It's like a punishment. And I decided that I need to go in order to build a country. I need to go in order to give people some employment.
Doc, you said something very, very powerful when you say, one, as a PhD holder, I must be able to create jobs. I must be able to make a difference rather than sitting and just maintaining the status quo, having even a supervisor who does not exactly know what they are doing. Let's look at joblessness in South Africa and look at the challenge. Most especially, I'm looking at young people who today seek for jobs and they cannot get jobs. Looking at through the straight gate, what are we looking at, and what is it that we can zoom into? I love what you're saying as an academic, that look, my role with the knowledge that I have, the abilities that I have as a researcher, which I know that's exactly who you are. looking at the unemployment rate, what are we looking at, Doc?
Yeah, when we look at the unemployment rate, we, as South Africans, we need to introspect, all of us. Okay. Academic institutions, for example, we have to look at the curriculum in terms of what we're actually teaching people. Is it, relevant? For example, when there is a graduation and you see graduates, I was addressing a graduation, at Valley University of Technology 2 years ago. And I was worried, because I was saying, I'm giving you a key note address, but I'm not giving you key employment. I'm just giving you an address. But I think we need to look at, introspect and say, what is it that we are actually doing? And in terms of our curriculum, in terms of even the people who are actually lecturing, of saying that these people, are they relevant? Do they understand the world? Do they understand exactly what is actually happening around the world, or is a person who's there on a paycheck? So we need to look at these things. And then universities, for example, they've got research, like master's, PhD, or honors and the like. But these research projects, they're there in the library. They're not doing anything. Now it's up to university to be actually active and say, you know what, my university has got a research project on the ZCC, pilgrimage train. I'm just giving an example. And this thing can actually create more employment. This is what we can actually do. Now that's what we have to do. But if maybe we're going to be passive and have these, researchers, in our library, who are not actually doing anything. Now we need universities to be very active in terms of that. And also graduate. People who are actually graduating, they must actually look at things from a different perspective. Of actually saying that, what is it that I can do in order to survive? What is it that I can do to change the paradigm, or being a job seeker into, a job creator? What is it that I can, who can I talk to? Can I talk to STRAIT? Can I talk to Mabila? Can I talk to Raduba? Can I talk to, what are the networks that are actually needed to make me a better person? Now, all of us within society, unemployment affects each and every person. We are in the same boat. And if the boat sinks, we're all going to sink. Now, unemployment is our problem. Also, the faith-based organizations, they have to look at what are the opportunities that can be created there. For example, there is something that is called thanatology. Thanatology is the study of death and dying. There are so many people, terminally ill people who are sick, and hospitals cannot accommodate them.
Oh, yeah.
This is a study that actually makes a person to be aware that you're not going to survive, you're going to die, and then give this person hope, and that you are not going to make it. You're caring about a person, caring about the family and the like. And how many people who are at our homes who are actually sick and we don't have a solution to? We could actually train our people in thanatology. What I'm saying to you, there are so many opportunities, but we need to be in a position to access those opportunities, and we need to be in a position to think outside the box. As you spoke about, the question of a straight gate. It means that you are changing the gears, in terms of the way you do things, and you are going to do things differently.
And then, Doc, thank you very much for that. And you said something about researchers that are maybe shelved in different institutions, which researchers, if they are put down to practicals, worked on, can create jobs. How do we unblock that? How do we get to, for example, your research is a very powerful one, looking at the road congestions during the ZCC pilgrimage and alternative transport that could help that the worshippers travel to and fro safely. I see it as one of the very important research that has been made, but what are the processes and what must we do? Who must we talk to? How must we talk to them so that researchers are not just shelved, but they are put into practice so that they create jobs, so that they create opportunities, they simplify things. Because when you look at challenges, it's like they are compounding by each passing day, as if we don't have people that are having foresight, that are able to see into the future. Now we're talking our energy problems, the outages of electricity and all that. I should think with academics, with researchers, we should be able to see that we are heading toward a cul-de-sac before we reach there. Let's talk about all these wonderful researches. What must happen?
What is it that can be done? That's it.
Yes.
That goes. What gets measured gets done, or you can't manage what you can't measure. Now, in other words, universities need to be measured. Maybe the Department of Higher Education should measure universities and say, University A, what have you done in terms of job creation, based on the research that you have? And then that thing must actually go into the performance management of the vice chancellor, as well as the executive team. Now, if, for example, these people are not actually held accountable, we're not going to see anything. If maybe the government could actually come up with that thing of saying that, out of those researches, that because the government is spending a lot of money in terms of financing universities, but what value are we getting out of that? But if maybe these people can be made to account, that's where we can actually convert these researchers into employment, because so many people will be employed, once we turn those actually research work into something.
Thank you, Doc. And my viewers and listeners, thank you so very much for being with us. You're free to ask us some questions and to make some comments as we continue. We really appreciate your presence and you going with us or journeying with us. Doc, let us also look at our programs offering as a nation, our institutions of higher learning. For a fact that there is an association of unemployed graduates. The relevance, looking at the job market, the direction it is taking, and the relevant of our output into the job market. Is there any relevance, or what exactly? First, looking eternally, looking into the country itself, because last week, in fact, May month, there were lots of graduations. I spoke in one of the graduations, but as I see many graduates, somehow back at the back of my mind, I'm having a question. Are they going to be rejoicing like they are rejoicing today as they graduate? Or is it graduation, then the next thing, darkness?
Yeah, it is indeed education, like graduation, and after that, darkness. I couldn't agree with you more. But also, when we look at opportunities, we don't actually have to look at opportunities only in South Africa, also overseas. For example, in Eastern Europe, maybe the former Soviet Union, what they're actually doing is they're employing teachers who have actually specialized in maths and science. And then they're well paid, those people over there. And then what I'm saying is, if you're a person and you want to go over there, there are some actually connection. I think, Pastor Strike, I can actually give you some of the contacts, in those countries, for those graduates who want to go there. And we look at the hospitality industry. Like you look at countries such as Australia, you look at Canada, those areas, those countries are highly Asianized, because a lot of people from Asia now they're going into those countries, particularly in IT, in hospitality. Like we have got hospitality in South Africa, and then people who are in hospitality, they can actually go and work in those countries. And globalization means you can be anywhere in the world. Now, we must not actually look into South Africa. Yes, we can actually create opportunities in South Africa, but also in other countries. You can go into other countries and create opportunities. And there's a concept, Pastor Strike, called Imagineering. Imagineering simply means that, in order for a country to succeed, you need to have three elements. Firstly, you must have invention. you need to invent things, from scratch. Secondly, there must be innovation. You need to be innovative in terms of the offerings that you have. And thirdly, you need to be an entrepreneurship. You need entrepreneurship. Now, in other words, that is imagineering. Now, as a country, whenever we look at the question of entrepreneurship, we have to also look at invention as well as innovation to help entrepreneurship. That's why a country such, China, they are more successful because of what? Of imagineering.
Doug, when you say that, you're taking me back. Back then, growing up, if you'll invent something, you'll be arrested. Just for inventing something, you'll be arrested. Is it something that will seem like this thing can become something? Is it a car? Is it something that, comes out of your mind? You will be arrested in South Africa. Don't you think that has done a great harm? Because it's like, as a nation or as a people, it's like we've reached the ceiling when it comes to inventions. And it's like we have to be beneficiaries of inventors. And I'm asking this because I know I'm speaking to a researcher. What can we do to make sure that something is instilled in the mind of a young South African to know that most of the things that we see today were not created when the world or when the heaven and earth were created, but people invented it. And those inventors, they became world leaders economically and otherwise. What do we need to do to unlock or to open that prop in the mind of a young African? When I say young African, this goes to the entire continent when we talk of inventions, even before we talk of innovations.
Yeah, absolutely. You invent because there's a need, Like, for example, if, for example, you realize that there is a need, that's where invention comes into the picture. And then, as you know, that during the dark days, we're not actually allowed to invent. There are so many things that we're not actually allowed to do. Even sociology, we were not actually allowed as Black people to study sociology, to understand society and social dynamics. Verwoerd, so many people don't know, he was a sociologist. That's why he understood social behavior. And then, but we can rewrite that script of actually saying that although we are hobbled by chains, not to think, but now, we need a type of a man, a man who's a thinker of great thoughts and a doer of great deeds. And then that's where we are. And then now, I think you need to be more of a generational thinker of saying that, what are we bequeathing to the next generation? And then once we have got that mindset, we'll be in a position to move forward. Saying that, for example, slavery, slaves were not allowed to read and write. But a lot of people are now into self-servitude. People don't want to read anymore. People don't want to write anymore. People don't want to research anymore. And that's self-servitude. But what we can actually say is, the new democratic government, although there are some hiccups, there and there, but they've eventually given each and every person say, you are now free to think. You are not free to invent. You are not free to innovate. You are not free to be an entrepreneur. And we need to tap into that, and we need to motivate young men, young women, and young men to be innovative. I think that's what we have to do. That's the gospel that we have to preach of saying you are free to think and you must think.
Yeah, I think that gospel is needed. It's needed like maybe never before. I have some of my viewers here, Mrs. Danisa Wagakosa, saying, speaking of signing a performance agreement, I am just thinking of the relevancy of the tool aligned to the strategic document versus the vision of a specific institution. Does the performance agreement really have teeth to bite, or it is just for compliance? I'm asking, Jay. She says, I'm just asking, is it for compliance, or does it really bite when we talk of performance systems that are there, and even making sure that people are complying? Is it for compliance, or does it really goes to something that can be measured, or something that really makes a difference?
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to strategic management or strategic plans, those plans are not cast in concrete, because I've seen so many people that have got strategic plans, but those strategic plans are not actually addressing the problems that we're actually having. For example, unemployment is a problem. And it's a national problem, and also it's a social problem, because it disturbs the smooth running of our society. And what I'm actually saying is that, why should universities have research if those research are not turned into something? And then the only way to get a return on those things, you need to put something in place to say, university so and so, you are also responsible for creating jobs. But if universities are free, they'll create graduates. And we don't want universities to create graduates. We want universities to create jobs. And a strategic plan is not something that is cast in concrete.
So, Doc, we in the month of June, where we're celebrating our youth, and of course, it's not a mistake that it is also a month where we celebrate fathers. And you said something about being generational thinkers, being able to leave something for the next generation. What can you say to fathers to start with when we talk about, because look, this government must do their part, corporate world must do their part, but let's boil it down to STRAIT and to Dr. Mabila. What are we supposed to do as men, as fathers, that must at least, one thing about Africans, we talk more of generational cases, and I think the time has come where we must talk about generational wealth. What must be our thinking? What is it that we must change? Because one thing that is also important is that we must not only complain about challenges, but we must come up with solutions. Being a youth month and being a month where we celebrate fathers, what can we say to fathers looking at this very serious challenge that we're facing of joblessness? We have sent children to school. You said something also about going or marketing globally, and I would love to come back to that. But what do you say to us as fathers? It's not the government of South Africa now. It's STRAIT. What must STRAIT do so or to become a generational thinker, so that he's part of the solution and not just part of the problem?
Yeah, also, it's a very interesting question. I think as men, firstly, I think we've got a bad name. Because when we talk about men, we are actually associated with abuse. We are associated with negative things. And then even during the apartheid era, what actually happened is a black man was actually alienated from his family. And then we have never been ourselves. And then the question is, what is it that we can do? I think the first thing that we have to do is we need to develop love. That's it. Love for our children and love for our partners. And I've always said that when Barack Obama took over as the president of the United States, I was very happy, not because he was black. I was very happy because he was actually showing the world that a black person is capable of love. And I think that the thing is, we need to show that we're capable of love. And then we need also to love our children. Last week, I was actually talking about performance-based love. And our love to our children must not be performance-based, because the problem with performance-based love is that, in order for us to love our children, they must have done something. In order for me to love you, you must have actually passed. You must have done this in the life, but God loves us unconditionally. And as fathers, I think what we need to do is we need to move away from performance-based love and love our children. For example, the question is, if your child is on Nyawube, would you still love that child? That's a challenge. Now, in other ways, we need to move away from performance-based love. The first thing is love. And then once we have got love, and everything shall be added.
Mm. Very true. I think that's very much important because truly, a man today is not. I give an example of back then when you are a woman and you fetching wood in the bush, and you see a man, you start singing. You knew you were safe. You knew you were protected. There is a man here. If an animal will attack, he will help. But today, you stand all other kinds of animals. But if you see a man, you know you are finished. And this truly is not a good image of a man. And I think it's upon us all to redeem this image. And redeeming the image is not only through talking, it's about application, it's about doing. Another thing that is also very crucial is that as men, we've got children that are in the house, like you talk of love, children that are in the house and children that are not in the house. You came into the marriage, you've got children somewhere. You know, sometimes men act like they would say, these are my ex-children. And the children are not feeling the love, they're not supported. And the next thing, the cycle of anger, bitterness continues. So we raise a generation of very angry people. So I think you're right, Doc, when you talk of love. And we're talking about, the globe is our parish, if I may put it that way. You can work anywhere in the world. But I just want to ask, I know we've got great people abroad, in different parts of the world. I have my younger brother in Australia, and his children, they are there and they are doing well. We have Dr. Manasseh Abraham, who's in the United States and doing very well. But talking of one of ukulele ka n'wazeku aya xikolweni a tirha a chivirika aya university after a dyondza. How do we begin to open their minds to see that you can make it out there, without the family having to conduct a funeral while you're still alive? For fear that if I'm Billy Candina, gone. Because these are the realities of what we face. If you check, not exaggerating, if you check at South Africans, I don't know where it is, but I think you will help me. Most of our African countries, one of their biggest prayer is to get a visa. They are in Europe, they are in the US, they are in every other continent, but not South Africa. South Africa is here and there. How can we break this thing? How can we? I remember there were days when our nurses will go to places like Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom. It was like, man, they are gone. Don't we have to do something maybe? And the Africans in the diaspora, don't we have to do something that is mentoring, that is a way of assuring that, look, the globe is just around and we can travel, we can work anywhere in the world. I'm just looking at, when you talk of the mindset, the Bible says, as far as you can see, that is yours. What can you tell us around that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think we're going to have experienced the problem of brain drain, because so many people have died through COVID, but we have never done any study to find out exactly how many doctors have died, how many nurses, how many one. And then now, I think as we are trying to settle in now, you'd actually find that a lot of people will be poached, if I have to use such a phrase, to different countries because of the question of actually COVID. And then talking about Africa, Nkrumah spoke about Africa, that Africa needed to unite politically, but I think we also have to unite economically as well as a continent. And also we need to unite socially. You spoke about the role of a father. I think we need something like maybe a movement that would actually say men awake, within the African continent. I mean, we need, as men, there must be this reawakening. When we talk about love, loving our partners, loving our children and the like, this thing should be continental in scope. We need to have, African programs that would actually address African challenges, so that even if maybe when you go to Zimbabwe, you'd actually find that the man that you meet is the man that you meet in South Africa. If you go to Zimbabwe, if you go to Mozambique, it should be that same thing. And then I think we need to start something now, to make it a point that as a continent, we're actually united in many respects.
Very powerful. Roland Baloy says, it is sad because the country spends a lot of money in education and we do not reap the rewards when professionals leave. Yes, that's when we're talking of brain drain, which is a serious concern, of course, and somebody said, we were taken away through slavery, but now we give ourselves to slavery. But that comes back to saying, Africa specifically, even South Africa, we are so rich in mineral resources and many, many other things that can make it right in this continent. Like you talk of Kwame Nkrumah, who said we must come out of this conference with one government, one currency. I just feel that we still have to pursue that. I think that vision was very much important because the resources of the continent are not really empowering and serving the masses of this continent. We know we have lost a lot of our brothers and sisters in the Mediterranean, sinking in boats and ships and things like that, trying to go to Europe for greener pastures. This brings me to the question, what must we do? It's again men, because when we talk of leaders, we talk of presidents of many countries in the continent, they are men. What is it that we must do right? And what is wrong as a researcher? What is it that we're doing wrong as a continent? Because I would imagine today South Africa is flooded with brothers and sisters from every other African country seeking for opportunities. And sometimes it boils down to a lot of unsettlements, and things like that, because there will be also those who steal, and then the next thing, it paints everybody as if they are all thugs, they are those who are involved in criminal activities. But the truth is that many African countries are not stable economically, and then they are coming down to South Africa because at least it's like we are stable. What must we do as a researcher, Doc? What is it that we must do?
I used to be Nkrumahist, and I love Nkrumah. But Nkrumah once, uttered a particular statement, and he said, we prefer to govern or misgovern ourselves to servitude in tranquility. And I think the problem, that people have actually maybe taken that statement out of context. And the problem that we have is misgovernance. We are misgoverning the continent. We are misgoverning our countries. And I think we need to rephrase what Nkrumah said. I think we said we prefer to govern ourselves to servitude in tranquility, not this thing of misgovernance, because this misgovernance, people have actually misgoverned. And that's why we have got illegal immigrants. Why? Because they're being misgoverned. And then if that situation goes unbridled, even in South Africa, we might actually end up being misgoverned, And then I think we need to say no to misgovernance. We need to govern responsibly. That's what we need. And that's a message that tonight we're actually sending to the entire continent, that this African continent needs to be governed and not to be misgoverned.
Very powerful. I see Dr. Criswell saying, with brain drain in skills, there is also capital drain caused by investing offshore. What do you say about it?
Yeah, because I mean, there is also, like drain, there's capital drain, as you say, people, trying to invest, offshore, because why do you invest? Because you assess the risks. If, for example, you realize that in your country, the risk is high, there's nothing that you can do. You have to invest offshore. And there's another drain, the black drain. Black drain are people who go into the corporate world and prematurely resign from the corporate world. That's a black drain. That's something that we need to also look into as well.
Yes. And let us also look at something that also has proven to be effective when it comes to also building the economy, a small business. What can we look at and what can we advise? And what is your take on small business? Many countries, they're building their economies. And when you look at small businesses where people are able to do something, what is your take on that?
Yeah, well, the other year I was in the United States, and I found that 60% of people owned or maybe they were running their own businesses. I think that it's also is a question of actually mindset and also discipline, that if you run your own business, it doesn't mean that you have to wake up at 1 o'clock or something like that. It means that you have to be hardworking. It means that you have to be professional. Because what I've also realized with our small business is a question of unprofessionalism. You say, okay, fine, come and fix something for me. A person does not do it and the like. Now, firstly, we need professionalism. And then secondly, we need training. There's no person who can actually be improved, through training. Like we need to train people, we need to give them ethics, and then also benchmarking. We need to benchmark. Like if you look at the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis and the like, they work together as a collective. They order things, as a collective and the like, and say that as a collective, what is it that we can actually do? We can learn from them that they're working together. That's why they're actually succeeding. Now, unity is the strength. As small businesses, we need to work together. As a businessman, if I've conceived the business idea, I must not be afraid to share that idea with you and say, Strike, I've got an idea. Can't we work together on this idea? I suppose I have andlakukomba kukuthurwa njani murhi wa mina asitiritano azona hi fanele hi share.
Very true, very true. Let's look at, we spoke a little bit about invention or inventing. Let's talk about innovating and the opportunities that are there in innovating, and looking specifically at our young people who are jobless, because I was very touched when we hosted last time Elmond Koza and Millicent Mashele. And Millicent said something to the tune that we who are educated, it is not just about us being able to put bread on our table, but we must be able to create jobs for others. Let's talk a little bit about innovations.
Yeah, innovation. I mean, we had Nkari and Mwansati, the perfume and the like. In innovation as well, it's, for example, in 1855, Benjamin Disraeli was a British premier and said, upon the education of the people of this country, the future of this country depends. I think the future of this country depends on education, the relevant education. And then that would actually enable people to think innovatively. If you think innovatively, you are actually creating more opportunities. And also you have to be very courageous. I mean, we are those young men that we actually hosted on this on this radio station. They actually told us that they had to be very bold. They had to be brave, in order to venture into the unknown. Now, that's what you need. That's one of the competencies that you need to be bold, and you need to believe in what you are doing, because if you don't actually believe in yourself, you'd actually have a problem. You must actually be determined of saying, this thing is going to work and I'm going to make it work. That's what those are the critical skills that you need, really.
There's This is a foundation that is doing a great thing. I'm one of the nominees. They are looking for men in different circles, in different spheres, to mentor young men, to encourage young men, which I think that's where now we're talking of the relay race, so that I'm not running alone and everybody applauding me and saying Strike is doing it, is doing well. But I'm able to take others and to take young men and run with them. What can we say to our children, more especially the youth today, when it comes to us as fathers running different organizations and corporates, when it comes to mentorship and when it comes to opening doors and opportunities for them? Because I think that is one thing that can be of great help, because if one has an idea to do something, they really need somebody. I might not have done the very same thing, but I might know something. For example, today, one young man said, I want to go into printing, the printing business. And I've seen this big machine, this beautiful machine, and I want to buy it. I said, no, you don't start there, because you don't have the slightest idea about printing. Start by thinking of what you want to print, and then start marketing and have a relationship with those that are established and they have printers, because you'll buy a machine and you will not have an idea what to do. But you can do your business and using somebody who is already established until you know and understand the business. What can you say to our young people? The June 20, the June 76, it's the old men of today. But I think that today we owe the youth today, and sometimes we always say the youth of today. The youth of today, we owe them something. And what is it that we owe them? What do you say to us? What do you say to them in an evening like this before we close this show?
Yeah, well, I think we need to empower them so that they can be independent. I think they are actually crying out for independence, economic independence, and maybe, let me talk about economic independence. And the other time when we were here, we spoke with Dr. Raduba. He's a member of the Black, Business Council. And then I spoke to him about it. And then he's actually in the process of actually making the point that, the Black Business, Council will actually have a youth wing. That's the only way we can actually, because there are so many opportunities, there are some tenders, there are so many things, that are happening in the Black Business Council. And then, I think we need to invite Dr. Raduba, to say to our young men, how far is he? I think what I did is to, I said to him, we need to have a youth wing. Like Napoleon Hill says, what the mind can conceive, it can achieve. I've conceived that idea. And I think once the youth wing is actually established in these councils, in these forums, in these business forums, our young people will be empowered to operate effectively in those forums.
True. I think that's very much important. Doc, we are about to wrap up, but let me take this opportunity and appreciate our brothers and sisters that have been with us on our Facebook page and those who have been with us on YouTube, and those of you who are listening to us on radio. Virginia Manganye, Matapelo Nkwinika, Monday Ojo, Pastor Joylene, Melusi Dube, the Onika Nkuna, and then Doris Noko, Alice Vuma, and then Ruzani Matomu. Thank you, my dear sister Kateko, Amisha Shaba, is it Shabane? And then is it Mwanati Tatabela? Thank you. And then Ramaru Obri Mpo, thank you. Virginia Mangany, thank you. Ranbowen, thank you. Takalani Wamashudu Chiwe, is it Chibafuni? Okay, Skubet Matlaulen, thank you. Melba More, thank you so very much. Constance Chabalala Kesilmane, Basani Zita, Skubet Matlaula, thank you. Shalat Makubele, Glory Gomba, Danisa, Waga Kosa Kesil says Danisa, Mr. Densibabi, thank you. And then Shalati Makubele there, and Tsakani Mabasa, one John Mawila Rodniwa Lake, Jim Jones, thank you so very much. And then it's up there, Lothongwani, thank you. Joyce Tusaho, Isaac Mahaha, thank you, Dr. Criswell Baloy. Thank you, Mitlotin Kuna. Thank you, William Mabasa. Thank you, Tinyeko Kosa. Maina Mabasa, thank you so very much. And then Lerato Kosa, thank you. Family, we just want to appreciate you all. Thank you for being with us. Those of you on YouTube also, and many, many more of you listening on radio, thank you so very much. Doc, as we wrap up, through the narrow gate, through the straight gate, can you wrap it up for us and give it to us as we release you? What do we take home?
Yeah, I think an narrow gate needs a person who's really, creative as well as, persistent. And then I think maybe let me borrow language from Calvin Coolidge. I like him. Was the 33rd president of the United States. And he once said, nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Close quote. In other words, you're not going to succeed because you're a genius. You're not going to succeed because you're talented. You're not going to succeed because you're educated. You'll only succeed because you are determined.
So that is the narrow gate.
That's the narrow gate.
The straight gate. Wow.
Yeah.
Doc, thank you so very much for giving us your time tonight and for sharing such great wisdom as we converse with you. We really appreciate you and thank you for availing yourself every time we need your help. You are such a blessing. And I must let my audience know that you are also a pastor. You are my colleague. And I really appreciate your heart, your commitment to uplifting the standard of living of people and your kingdom approach. So we really appreciate Doc, and may you have yourself a blessed night together with your family.
Okay, thanks. Same to you. And then thank you to our viewers as well as our listeners. And then we'll meet the next time. Thank you for the courtesy with which you have listened to us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much to all our viewers, our listeners. Thank you so very much. That was the conversation with Dr. Mabila, Mathebula, and myself, Pastor Strike. And we thank you for being with us. And we trust that something has been dropped in your heart and in your mind. As a businessman, as an academic, remember we owe our children something. And let us also hold them by hand. This month of June, as we celebrate Youth Month, what are we doing for young people? Can we empower them somehow? Some of it is not really something that you can touch with your hands, but it's something that you can drop in their minds. It's just an affirmation, just believing in their dreams, encouraging them in their dreams, and giving them hope. And I tell you, one day they'll come back and say, I am that young man. You spoke to me, and look at where I am today. Thank you so very much. And I really appreciate you all. It's a blessed and an awesome night, and blessings to you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.